From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this next edition of Prime Minister Talks with the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. Prime Minister, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the program.
Good afternoon to you, Cedric. Good afternoon, St. Martin, all that are listening via whichever medium. And welcome to our third Prime Minister Talks. I'm really excited to be here and to be able to address some of the questions that have been coming my way.
Some of the questions that we even covered last week or the week before, because I think you got a little interrupted with regard to your schedule. Anything developing that you might want to make mention of? Anything at all? Or we can just jump into this week's questions?
We can just jump into this with day's questions. Okay. And then if there's time left over, then we can,
we can talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get the first one out of the way. And of course, we also want to thank the listeners for being a part of the program and sending in your questions. The first one this week: what are the plans to address the lack of responsiveness in the personnel department, as this is a very discouraging thing for most people who are trying to return home at this time?
Yes, Cedric, I must say, coming into the Ministry of General Affairs, many of the complaints that I have been fielding have been in one or two areas, either personnel affairs, which you're talking about, or in facility services. So these are the two areas that have my direct attention and have had since I've come to the ministry. It's new for me, yes. So it was first assessment of what the problems were. And I do know that we have some challenges. We do have some challenges. I have been asking them to at least respond because there is openings or vacancies listed, and maybe there's no budget for them or whatever the case is. So I think that persons applying should at least get a response, an initial response. So that's being worked on. In my most recent meetings just this week with the Secretary General of General Affairs, who has a direct responsibility together with the DMO head for P&O, which is Personnel Affairs, Personnel and Organization. I expressed my concern that we're more in the organizational part. We're busy with that, but not enough is being done on a human factor. It's human resources at the end of the day. So we are assessing positions. I have actually proposed that we do a 6 months assessment. So department heads assess not only how persons are working, but how happy are we in our jobs. I think if we create a culture of inclusion of the persons and their desires and their vision and their views on how things can be improved within an organization or a department or a service, that you can see then an enthusiasm that has been missing in many, many of the departments and many of the service departments. And we serve, general areas throughout government. So general affairs really touches all ministries, and personnel affairs for sure. So we're assessing what vacancies have priority, making sure we have budget for those. And for me, they have to report now on a bi-weekly basis as to how far are we with these, because several persons contact me directly. I have applied for this and that function, and I have not had a response, not even a response. So we are definitely assessing how to improve these things, and even if necessary, that we have to bring in someone to train or put in, direct responses for as we promote more e-governance. You will get that also faster, and that is something we're working on together with MinFin, Finance Minister, to see how we can, make government services more efficient. I've seen a great improvement on the public service center side in getting responses to people. Now that needs to roll over.
Right, translate into the other departments.
Into the other departments, especially those that,
service the public.
Service the public. And so to the person that sent that question and to all of you, I wanted to start with that. Thank you for the questions you submit, because it gives us a better idea of what is really hurting the public out there in trying to deal with general affairs. So for me, getting personnel department to service not just the organization in terms of who comes in, who comes out, but also the human resource factor and dealing with how to motivate, how to mediate when there are conflicts between department heads and workers in a way, and finding the best fit for our current staff is part of the priority for the next 6 to 12 months going in, since I now have an idea that I can return and make some lasting changes.
One of the things we see throughout the organization, and even from the civil servants themselves, you would constantly hear there are constraints on budget. So hiring additional human resource capacity could be an issue. Is that something that you can speak to at this time?
Well, what I've noted since coming back on the operational side of government is that several persons left between post-hurricane 2017 to 2019, some as a result of the hurricane, some as a result of frustration. And that's why I'm saying we're having such a great turnaround because of certain things not working the way people had expected coming into government service. And especially if we're going to encourage our young professionals to come into this field, I want to be able to retain these young professionals and not have a constant turnover. So in personnel affairs itself, we have a high turnover of the employees that need to handle these requests, these personnel issues within the different ministries as well. So each ministry has a personnel consultant, so a person that is assigned to them. But if you have a constant turnover, then for a time, one person is carrying 2 ministries, and it's a lot because government is literally one of the biggest employers in St. Martin. So we need a personnel office that works in the best interest. And if we can improve on making sure we have the right people in the right places in personnel itself, and this is not to diss anyone that's currently working there, but I know that they're understaffed. So getting them staffed properly, and like you mentioned, some of these staff vacancies are who have recently left. So the budget is not an issue. We have the budget to cover these vacancies. We just need to actually fill them, and not just fill them with people who have a desire to be there. And I think that is something in the persons who are applying, that desire is part of your application.
You're listening to Prime Minister Talks right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9. Stay tuned. We're going to get back to the questions you've submitted to the Cabinet of the Prime Minister. One of the topics in our next segment, is it easy to get a job and to apply? So stay with us. Details coming up right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM as Prime Minister Talks continues right here. So stay with us. Coming up,
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Every day at the Civil Registry Department, we are confronted with at least one customer who did not pay attention to the expiration date of their passport, such as the Lockharts. To avoid this from happening to you and your family, we urge you to check the validity of your passport. If your passport is about to expire, please follow these simple steps to make an appointment. Visit appointments.stmartingov.org and follow the easy steps. All applicants must apply in person, last issued Dutch passport, 2 recent photos taken within 6 months. Minors must be present with legal guardians. Fee for adults, 210 guilders. Fee for minors, 150 guilders. Additional information can be requested. 4 weeks processing time. Your identity is your responsibility.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Sylvaria Jacobs.
Good afternoon, St. Martin. You're listening to Prime Minister Talks with the Honorable Sylvaria Jacobs. I'm Cedric Peterson, sitting alongside the Prime Minister, and we're taking your questions. In this second segment, as indicated, we were going to touch base with the next question submitted to UPM. Is there an easier way to get a job or a chance to apply for a job?
Yes, I'm very, when I read that question, I'm wondering if we're doing enough in preparing for how to prepare an application, how to, I know we have a guidance office at SSSD, which is upstairs Gatsby, opposite the police station or between the Windward Island Bank. The guidance counselor there is very good in guiding and assisting persons. I know schools also have guidance counselors that prep students leaving school in how to apply for jobs, etc. So I'm not going to stand here or sit here and give those explanations. But in terms of what the ministry looks for, there's what they call a brief and selectie. So You send in letters, and if you receive 10 letters for the same job application, they choose the 3 best. So your letter, when you apply for a job, should grab the attention in terms of knowing what the job is you're applying for, mentioning some of your strengths, and for me, your passion to be able to work in that field. Your CV should also complement that. And a lot of people write very scanty CVs, they just put the basics. But it's very, very important that you put your experience in there as well, besides your achievements in diplomas and certificates, that you also list your experiences. If you volunteer, it gives an insight into your personality as well. Mm-hmm. You understand? And so your qualifications for the job are what allows you to make what they call the selection of letters, the brievenselectie, to be called in for an interview.
Do you think that's still a strong thing? I remember going through that in secondary school, all of us who've gone through secondary school. And
it's still a strong component.
To basically get our students prepared for the job sector.
There's actually more now, as I mentioned with Michelle Chance at SSSD. I know they're supposed to have another one as well. There were 2 before, but I know 1 left shortly after I was a member of parliament again. But that department also assists students who are going away to study. And we've actually made it a necessary stopgap that they do an interest test. So there's a possibility, I think, that every citizen should, look it up online. If you're looking for a job, do an interest test to see what type of job fits you. So not just what you studied, but your personality. Because a lot of people end up in jobs that require them to sit for long hours at a desk, and they're not fit for that type of work. Another person will apply for a job that requires them to be in the field, to go out and do inspections, to be on the road, as it would be. And they are, they prefer to be in a quiet area. They get disturbed if people come at them too often. So you need to know who you are first. Ensure that it comes across, the most positive aspects of yourself come across in your application letter, and that your CV is well fleshed out, and persons can grasp a concept of who you are prior to you being even invited, for you to even make the cut to be interviewed. So no, it's not easy, but of course, those who persevere, sometimes people send in just blanket letters, like for any job that's available. You're going to end up in a stack that's this high.
Correct.
And then when they do decide to put out that function, they're not going to go through a stack of 100. So look out for when certain jobs have been listed as available. We have it in our government information page. I'm sure it should be also visible on the DCOM's website or Facebook page. I don't know which one, but we have enough information venues now that people looking for vacancies within government know where to go.
And we always, we always encourage everyone to, of course, visit the government website, stmartinov.org, because that's where a lot of the greatest portal of information you'll find. And that's where all the departments are encouraged to make sure that there's information there. What I've noted, though,
and this was actually when I was Minister of Education, and it just popped into my head, is that when a department head is aware or has a vacancy and sees that application letter, they can fast track it with the personnel department. So if there's a vacancy in DCOM and your department head is in close contact and knows, or the application letter not only goes to the Minister of General Affairs or the Minister of whichever affairs, but also CC'd to the department head, and the department head knows and sees potential, they can highlight that to the respective personnel officer that will then be, pulling that person in for an interview or whatever the case may be. Because another part of the process people don't understand is you sit in a committee. Right. So it's not the department head itself, him or herself, or the personnel officer that is doing the discussion. It's usually a panel of 3. It would be the department head, sometimes the SG, and the personnel officer that would make up that group of 3 persons that would then interview you and then score you along with others. And that's the process by which you can get hired for a position in government, be it, on the lowest to the highest level of functioning. So you got to just put your best foot forward.
Are there any plans in government to promote better eating habits amongst the population? Now, we know that this question would normally be a public health one, and we did let our listeners know that there will be questions that will cross the ministries.
Right.
So what do you think about that one? Is that something being discussed?
We did. I didn't get an opportunity to go in depth with the public health minister or the inspectorate. Some of the answers did not come forth. Let me just say here, disclaimer, from the ministries that we sent it to. Maybe the time isn't enough. So I will come back on this if the response comes in different to what I said. But I felt that I could still touch on this because we're busy in the formation of a new government, and public health and healthy eating habits and healthy habits in general of our population will be promoted via this very medium, DCOM. You know how I stay. I'm going to use DCOM till they say stop. But I believe public awareness is key. We want to have it promoted also within schools, have set policies for what may or may not be sold in schools. I know a lot of the private or semi-private subsidized schools have very strict rules, and they are held up very well. But in our public schools, a lot of the times, the public school canteen is seen as the only means of revenue for the school. And so they sell what the children like. When I headed a public school, I did not allow it. And then when I left, I saw that, the rules went very, very lax. Right. But when children walk to school and they will pass by a supermarket and they pick up chips and soda, etc., as a school, all you can do is have a parent pick it up if you have a set policy.
Right.
But I would like to encourage parents to this venue, and we will continue to do so in the years to come. You will see it playing a prominent role, and not just for the Ministry of VSR, across the board. Across the board, not only for eating healthy, but for instance, use of one-time plastic and styrofoam and all those things. Everywhere I go, people already realize don't give her no straws. Don't give her no plastic little bottle of water. I don't want it. I'm not contributing to that. If I'm really without a choice and I'm really, really, really thirsty, I'll take a small bottle. But I usually carry my own bottle. It's practices I believe we need to practice. And something that this question brought up in me is this habit we have of littering in St. Martin. We nasty. We need to stop. We have roadside cleaning crews. They're not there to pick up garbage. They're there to cut back grass. And people on St. Martin, somebody gonna pass by. I see the guys here twice a week. No, that's not what they are hired to do. They were hired to do the initial cleanup and then maintain the cutback of bushes, etc. We as people of St. Martin need to learn to dispose of our trash in a responsible manner and in fact minimize our trash that goes to the landfill. And we need to do that before the law passes. Change the culture. So eating habits, but also the disposal habits of our people need to be addressed.
You're listening to Prime Minister Talks with the Honorable Severia Jacobs. Stay tuned. Our final segment's coming up, and she's going to talk about that formation process that she's been given the responsibility to get in gear. Not once, but now twice since post the elections 2020. Stay with us. PM Talks continues right here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Severia Jacobs.
Every day at the Civil Registry Department, we are confronted with at least one customer who did not pay attention to the expiration date of their passport, such as the Lockharts. To avoid this from happening to you and your family, we urge you to check the validity of your passport. If your passport is about to expire, please follow these simple steps to make an appointment. Visit appointments.stmartingov.org and follow the easy steps. All applicants must apply in person, last issued Dutch passport, 2 recent photos taken within 6 months. Minors must be present with legal guardians. Fee for adults, 210 guilders. Fee for minors, 150 guilders. Additional information can be requested. 4 weeks processing time. Your identity is your responsibility.
Prime Minister Talks with Honorable Prime Minister Severia Jacobs.
Welcome back to our final segment. Prime Minister, the Honorable Severia Jacobs in studio. I'm Cedric Peterson. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you.
Final question, and it deals directly with the formation of the government. That
Right.
process now has happened now twice, in the interim status and now post-elections. How is that going?
Okay, I must say, thank God, I know what I'm doing this time. So hopefully it goes smoother.
Well, then that's a quick study then.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I'm a person. I like to know what I'm doing, so I didn't like being shaky about anything. But it went, and it went well according to others. Nothing extreme the first time around, but this time around I know a little more of what I'm doing. I held let's say a constituting meeting
Right.
with candidate ministers for them to understand the process better. I think there are many misconceptions as to what the screening process is about. It's basically a fact check of information you provide and a judicial background check to ensure that you don't have a pending case or that you are not a convicted criminal. Those are two prerequisites on the judicial side. The fact check is done by the National Security of St. Martin. It falls also within the Ministry of General Affairs. Basically checking the information that is requested of you. So you fill in a questionnaire, you sign a declaration of integrity stating that you would distance yourself from any and all functions that you currently hold that are in conflict of interest with the function that you hope to hold as minister. That declaration also allows for the investigation. So you sign that, which gives consent to the national security as well as to the prosecutor general to do the two types of investigations that need to take place. Up-to-date records in terms of your financials, up-to-date records in terms of your registration. You need a copy of your passport. You need a copy of a declaration from SZV, from the tax office and the receiver's office, stating that you're in good standing, and then you have no problem.
What is in the arena of popular opinion, what is the community perceiving this vetting process like? Is it real? Can you kind of quelch on some of those crazy ideas out there that people have where they literally look at this process now and they say, oh, that person will never be able to pass the screening?
And you heard what I mentioned.
Yeah.
So the fact checked, so you fill in a bunch of information. You have to provide your CV. You have to provide your underlying documents to the CV. We just talked about that.
Right.
So, if you give facts that are the truth, when they fact check, there should be no problem.
Correct.
So my advice was to the candidate ministers is to fill in your documents as thoroughly as possible. If you have any businesses, you do the same for your businesses. If you have any foundations in your name that you are director of, founder of, you have to fill that in as well. And so there's the tax declarations and everything that pertains to that, to every business you own, every foundation that you are in. And you have to list within your CV all the functions you hold. So if I was a lion or a Rotarian, you hold a function. You have a membership in this organization. If you're on the board, it's different. If you are, so all those things have to be noted. Sometimes, let me stick there. So if the facts are corroborated, it's not a problem. So the National Security does a fact check on what is submitted, on your documentation as to your schooling, your experience working, et cetera, et cetera. The SZV, the onvanger, the receiver, and the tax inspectorate provides you information. If there's information lacking, you'll be asked to provide more information, etc. So once it's clear up front, and I think this last group, it's pretty clear what they have to do. There's less feeling of there's some kind of sinister plot going on to take people down. If you have nothing to hide, you should not have a problem. Yeah. And if you do, you should not put your name forward, because the first thing you sign is the integrity declaration that you allow for the fact check to happen, and you allow for the prosecutor general to check into, it's like a police report at another level. But what is fact is that it is not the deepest vetting of anything. Right. So certain members within government, certain positions within government or the high councils of state go through a much stricter vetting process, okay. Screening/vetting process.
All right, PM.
And it is mainly to ascertain the integrity of the persons that will hold the highest executive office of St. Martin. In doing so, you are representing St. Martin. And the governor, especially His Excellency, is very, very keen on that St. Martin does not put itself at too much risk. So it might not be that you have a criminal record, but if you have had situations where you are, for instance, in constant combat with whether it's a SZV about payment arrears, etc., it is not a good look.
Gotcha.
And it would mean that if the governor hesitates to then swear you in, it would mean that there are several areas in which that doesn't look good for the member that you want to represent you. And until we have this as an elected function, like the members of parliament, then you will have this process to go through as long as our laws exist in the way they do. So those that are having an issue with it, it's not a problem. If they are in parliament currently, they are the places where amendment to legislation can take place. I've also received, since the last time, a draft of a screening law, because it's based on regulation and other laws and not necessarily a law specific for screening, the national security law and some others. So if we want to tie it in and be more specific as to what, how, when for ministers, then there's a draft that can be vetted, amended, and from what I've heard, it's been presented to practically every prime minister before me. So no one has taken the initiative to move forward with it. I will have, I didn't have the time in the last period, but now I will have a look at it with my legal team. And then if we don't see any need for changes, then it will be brought to Parliament. And there they can have their say on it.
Gotcha. PM, we just ran out of time. Final words.
Yes, first I would like to say thank you to all those who have sent in questions to PM Talks via whichever medium, whether the email or the Dropbox. If you have not heard any answer yet to your question, that is because I have not received the official response from the dedicated department or ministry, and then you can tune in next week to hear the answer to your question. If you would prefer to receive the answer to your question in writing via an email, please say so in your question, and then we won't say it on the air. It's totally up to you how you would like to be responded to, but it's a pleasure for me to be able to communicate with the people of St. Martin through this medium. So thank you, Cedric.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And of course, thank you, St. Martin, for tuning in. Be sure to stay with us here on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9. That'll be for the entire remaining period of next week until our next edition right here on St. Martin Gov Radio.